a lot of contractors excel at what I'll call the gotcha moment. And that's basically, when you ask for a change order because you backed them into a corner, there's no other way for them to do the job. If you're a good contractor, get out in front, make sure that you know the road that you're headed down. And if you see problems, identify them before the problems so that you have enough time and enough resources to mitigate it.
This is Eric Anderton, and you're listening to Construction Genius, a leadership masterclass. Thomas Edison said that genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. If you're a construction leader, you know all about the perspiration, and this show is all about the 1% inspiration that you can add to your hard work to help you to improve your leadership. Welcome to this episode of Construction Genius. My name is Eric Anderton. Construction partnering is a structured process that brings a design and construction team together regularly throughout the life of a project. Benefits of partnering include investing $1 in partnering and saving $114, resolving issues and preventing disputes. The average claim in the U.S. costs $29.6 million and takes 16 months to resolve. Achieving greater outcomes in terms of schedule, cost, and quality, and then also improving accountability and identifying barriers and opportunities for success. And the reason I bring this up is because my interview today is with Mike Ghilotti, who is the president of Ghilotti Brothers Construction in Northern California. And we are going to talk about how he has used a partnering approach to successfully execute a number of projects. And I think you're going to find that part of the interview very interesting. And in addition, Ghilotti Brothers is a family-owned company with a very unique history. The Ghilotis have been in Northern California for over a century. And we're going to talk about how Mike is executing a succession plan which involves bringing his children into the business. And we're going to draw some very practical lessons that I think you'll find very helpful if you are involved in a family succession plan, or even if you're not necessarily a family construction business, but you do have a succession plan in place. So enjoy this interview. We do take two tracks here. We talk about the partnering aspect of construction and the family succession planning aspect. It's a great interview. You'll find Mike extremely engaging, and I appreciate you listening to the Construction Genius podcast. My name is Eric Anderton, and it's a pleasure to have Mike Ghilotti of Ghilotti Brothers Construction with me today on the show. Mike, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Eric. Proud to be here.
That's awesome. And as we kick off the podcast, I know we were just having a quick chat before we began here, Mike. Take me back to the time when there were 4 separate Ghilotti companies bidding on one public works project in San Rafael, California.
Yeah, this is about 3 years ago. It's a smaller project, it's about $585,000, and there's only 4 bidders. We have a bid runner there, and they open up the bid results as they do at 2:05 p.m., and they read out the results. And of course, you got to be low bidder. And, it's bragging rights. It's all about bragging rights. And so there's 4 companies that are listed as bidders. There's Majoran Ghilotti, there's Team Ghilotti, there's Ghilotti Construction, and of course there's Ghilotti Brothers, the best, which is our company. So they read out the results, and we're low bidder by about $15,000, and we're all excited. The bid runner goes up to talk to the lady there, the administrator, and says, "Okay, this is who I am, and send the information to me. We're ready to do the job." And she says, "Well, hold on. We're not ready to say that you're the responsive low bidder." And he said, "Well, we're the low bidder. We're Ghilotti Brothers." She says, "Yeah, but I'm going to hold on for a little bit because I'm concerned there's collusion." And this guy goes, "Do you know anything about the Ghilotis? Are you new to San Rafael?" She says, "Yeah, I just got here a couple months ago." He goes, "Yeah, don't worry. You just got the lowest price and the cheapest price you're ever going to get by having all 4 Ghilotis bidding on the same job." So
now that's interesting because Your history, the Ghilotis have over a century of history in Northern California building projects. Is that right?
Yeah, we go back 108 years.
So tell me a little bit about how the company started, how you got to the four different companies, and where you as Ghilotti Brothers are going here in the future.
Well, it goes back to my grandfather. He came from Grosio, Italy, up by Lake Como, straight to San Rafael, California.
Right on.
And such a blessing. He heard about the earthquake, and he was a stonemason, so he was a tradesman. And
so this is early 1900s, like 1906, the San Francisco earthquake.
Just after. So about 1908, works for a couple of years, decides he wants to get married. Where does he find a wife? He's got to go to Italy. So
there you go.
Italy, and
he's got to go no internet back then, right? He had to go all the way back.
Oh my gosh. I wonder somehow, people get around. I think back to James. He comes from Italy with no GPS, no ATM cards, and no cell phone. I can barely get into San Francisco and back out without problems. So
that's beautiful.
He made it happen, and he starts a company in 1914. And 1950, after getting some of the kids into the business and really enjoying it, he's getting on in years, and he says, you guys got to buy the business from me. And that was two reasons. One, because he wanted him to earn it and value it. He wasn't going to just give it to him.
Right on.
Second reason is because he needed a 401k. And so those payments were going to help his wife after he passed on. So the four brothers buy the company, and they take off in 1951, and they grow that thing like crazy. The challenge was that the oldest brother, Willie, was really the glue in the family. He died in 1964, I think, from a stroke. So now you have the three other brothers. We have one that's an absolute crazy, wild, really brilliant, smart brother, but really challenging to deal with. And the other two that worked well together. So eventually, Babe, the challenging brother, starts his own company. And then it's the last two. And then, of course, after my uncle Dino passes, then, my cousin, Dick Ghilotti, he spins off and starts his own company. And so it just evolves. And then, there's another split of two of the brothers later. So it's probably the most unique story in the construction industry, that up in Northern California, in this small region, is four James Ghilotti descendants, all doing the same type of work, all working in the same region and competing against each other.
What would you say is just for you personally, what's the biggest challenge that you've had to handle in terms of those family dynamics over the years?
The biggest challenge that I've had to deal with is how to deal with the people that work for you and the challenge they have in feeling like they have their own identity. Everybody knows Ghilotti, they know the name, but when you're going out and you're meeting with a developer or you're meeting with somebody else, they really can't differentiate you from another company. And they just assume it's all one big company. They really do. So that's a big challenge.
So that's an interesting thing. So from a marketing perspective, every company is looking to distinguish themselves from other companies, but your challenge is particularly acute simply because there's other Ghilotis. What do you focus on in terms of distinguishing yourself from those others, as well as the other competition that you face?
Yeah, it's a challenge. For us, what we do is we really try to differentiate ourselves as a non-conventional construction company.
Interesting.
So many companies like to come out, build it, and move on. And through my experience of being on the Caltrans Partnering Steering Committee and some of the things that they had to do in 2016 when they had a big bond measure and wanted to get back into partnering, I've learned through that our best value is to work with developers, work with clients, and mitigate risk and align expectations. So that's really where we shine.
So you focus on that aspect of partnering. In your experience, what is the key to a successful partnering project?
Well, it starts right out of the gates. And what you do is you need to identify your risk and your opportunities.
Okay.
And they call that a risk opportunity register. And we do that with every job that we put together. Mitigating risk, every entity, every client, every agency has risk. Every contractor has risk.
Yep.
So we're going to develop that great partnership. How do I help you mitigate your risk, and how do you help me mitigate mine? And it's like old time contracting used to be, but it used to be done out in the field with people that were empowered to do that and could make a bargain. I'll help you out and you help me out. Now it's in a more formal, structured setting when you do facilitated partnering. But it starts with mitigating risk, and it also starts with aligning expectations. So set these big, hairy, audacious goals.
Yep.
What are we going to do on this project? Are we going to finish early? We're going to be under budget. We're going to do value engineering. What's our safety program going to look like? All those things set the tone for how you want this job to perform.
What do you find is the biggest challenge in even the healthiest partnering environment when a conflict comes up?
Yeah, that is probably the number one thing. And the biggest challenge is it lingers too long. It lingers too long out in the field. It disrupts that cohesiveness and that teamwork that the resident engineer, if you will,
yep.
or the foreman or supervisor have, because now it's like a poison and starting to poison the job, and it makes everybody retreat and go into their own corners. So the biggest advocate of solving that problem is to elevate it very quickly.
Okay.
And we set up a ladder where it's an escalation ladder for issues. And it's not a reflection on that team. It doesn't say that they can't solve the problem. It just says that they're challenged and we want to get it up and away from them so they can keep building. Okay. And we want to focus on the next level to say, okay, we'll sit down and we'll do our best to solve this and move it along.
That's interesting. So you get it out of the field into another level so that the building can continue and you can work on the problem.
Yeah. And, as you get it away from the people that live it and breathe it, sometimes you see it from a different angle, have a different perspective, figure out another way of solving it and moving it on, and it becomes not personal, it becomes professional. So it usually results in a good outcome.
If there was one thing you could change about the typical partnering process that you're involved in to really enhance it, what would that one thing be?
Right now, the biggest challenge with partnering is you have private entity that are very motivated to move the project along and to, meet these goals. The biggest challenge we find is that on the, agency side that they're not empowered to make decisions. They don't have the ability to finalize things, make agreements, and they don't have the resources, quite frankly, to perform at a level that we do. So it's a challenge, and it's very tough to keep both engines going at the same time when the agencies and the owners just don't have the capacity to work at that level.
Okay, that's interesting. So there needs to be an alignment, not only of expectation, but there needs to be sort of a power structure alignment as well, where you have people in the agency level who can make those decisions. You need to be able to bridge those gaps. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. Yeah. We run an organization. We know the level of confidence we have with our project managers, for example. And we empower them to go do a good job. Yeah, maybe they have to check in, but they're going to keep us informed. We have to make business decisions every single day of our existence. So we're geared for that. The agency's not so much. Very bureaucratic, very top heavy, lengthy turnaround times. All these things take away from that momentum that you need that's so important to building a project and being successful, is keeping that momentum.
So that's almost a cultural thing it seems such a challenge when you have a culture in the public sphere, in the agency sphere, that is so it's slow and it's not entrepreneurial compared to the culture of a typical construction company.
Absolutely. And, it's inbred in the system that they have. They're not rewarded for making quick decisions. In fact, most agencies and most cultures penalize people for making decisions. Even if it was a good decision at the end of the day, it might have saved time. It might have saved a little money. But at the end of the day, nobody wants to put their neck out anymore and risk that. Yep. And it's always easy to be a 20/20 hindsight person, but we don't have that ability in construction. Every day we're burning daylight. We got to go.
So let me ask you this: when I think about partnering, it's always you mentioned Caltrans and things like that. Do you think the philosophy of partnering is a realistic one in the private sphere, where you have a private owner, a developer or someone like that? Have you had any success in those areas?
It's even more crucial in that arena. It's even more powerful because they are geared more closely to what you can replicate on the construction side. And, they have more to risk. The agency doesn't understand and acknowledge the risks they have because they're kind of insulated. But owners and developers and private clients will really appreciate the fact you're coming to them saying, I want to set goals for this project. I want to get out early. I want to do it under budget. I want to mitigate your risk. Let's sit down and figure this out. And your owners and your clients are going to just enjoy the heck out of that.
Do you find are you guys aren't a GC, right? Are you more? Do you general the projects, or are you more of a sub? How does that work?
Well, we're a general engineering firm, so we do paving, grading, underground concrete. So for the horizontal construction, we do pretty much everything. Okay, and we are a GC.
So then you can come in as the GC and establish, even in the private situation, a partnering type relationship.
Absolutely. Okay. And I'll take it a step further, Eric, and say that the best value is to get in early and see if you can help pre-construction the job.
Right on.
Right? So you're starting to help them as a trusted business advisor and say, hey, this is a great concept, great design, but did you think about this? I can save money if you reformulate the engineering criteria here or the design spec, and then you're out in front of it and you're mitigating it before the job even starts.
Do you have do you tend to self-perform most of your work, or do you have subs that are involved in the partnering process as well?
We do, and that's the challenge, especially on the big heavy highway contracts we do for Caltrans and everything. Here's subcontractors that maybe have a 5 or 10% stake. Yep. They may be in early or they may be in late. Yep. And you do want to include them, but how do you include them in this process and make them feel like they have value? So that is a bit of a challenge. The best thing you do is just communicate early and often, ask for their input at the very beginning, and then try to get them up to speed as they're ready to come in and be a part of it. But I can tell you that, subs are keys to this game as well. Yep. And, the more you can bring them in and, again, align expectations. When you guys get here, this is what we need out of you, and this is what we're up against, the better your project's going to be, the more successful.
Excellent. Well, shifting the conversation a little bit back to this idea of generational succession. What is your ongoing plan for your company in terms of, the legacy of your organization?
Well, it starts with a good management team, and everybody knows that you're up against that. You've got to have a sound management team, and I've been blessed that I'm not on the front line. A lot of construction company owners, they start a company, they're the front line of everything. They're taking the calls, Yep. They're going out and taking care of problems, they're trying to manage, they're trying to collect money, take care of regulations. So I really feel for them. I'm so blessed that as a third generation, I'm insulated. We've built this structure and we take care of things and in that level. So, the management team is there, and that's key. And then now I'm experiencing the next generation of Ghilotti Brothers, Gen 4, which is, my son, Mario, who just graduated from Cal Poly.
Nice.
Been with us for about 3 months.
That's cool.
God bless Cal Poly. What a great out of the ground program for them. But
it's beautiful.
And he's got 3 siblings. And so for me and my experiences of living through fractured companies, fractured, history and seeing what happens to companies that, don't have a plan for the second generation. So I can tell you, Eric, this actually started when I was raising these kids. I wouldn't even let them get in fights.
Right.
I mean, the older brother always whomps on the younger brother, and I wouldn't even allow that because it starts so early when you go into, relationships. Brothers will be arguing in a business, and it'll go all the way back to when they were 9 years old, and the one kid beat up on the other kid.
That's right.
So I've been at it my whole life to make sure that they respect each other, they get along, all that stuff, so that when they do have the opportunity to work together, that they have no barriers to being good partners and good brothers.
So that's interesting because it sounds like from a very early age, your expectation was that they would come into the business. How have you managed your expectation with their expectations? How have those things lined up over the years?
Well, it's funny because when you're in a family business, let's go to me.
Right.
When I was growing up, I was started when I was, 13 years old on a grease truck, worked all my way through labors, all that stuff. And when I graduated from college, I wasn't asked I was never asked by my dad if I wanted to come into the business.
Interesting.
And I never asked him. It was a weird dynamic, but I just kind of knew that I would do it. And so I don't know if that's how it's going to work. I mean, it certainly did with my oldest, but the other 3, I'm trying to set the foundation for what could be and make sure that it's there if they want it.
Okay.
But I did have a breakthrough the other day. I did have a situation where, my youngest son, who's now a junior in high school, basically acknowledged that my efforts to make sure that they were all good with each other was going to be so powerful because he basically said, I'm so excited to be able to work with my brothers when I get out of school.
That's interesting.
See that I had been working to make that happen. And he was talking about how fun it's going to be to hang out with them and do business.
So that's a deep insight right there, because you think about how you have consciously worked on their relationships, knowing how a fractured relationship from childhood can have a massive impact on a relationship in adulthood.
Absolutely.
That's interesting.
And I've also, tried to take into account each of their personalities. My son, Mario, is exactly like my father. 100% energy, passion, makes decisions, go-getter, wants to take risks. And my other children, not so much.
Right.
So I have to work with him and say, you have to be a consensus builder. You have to bring everybody along. You're going to have siblings in this business. You can't just decide to go do something without bringing them with you. So it's all those aspects and dynamics that enter into it too.
That's interesting. So what are you doing to make sure that your kids are earning it? They're not just daddy's boys showing up one day and getting the nice office and the sweet truck and all that kind of stuff.
Sure. I thought about this a lot. I got my MBA when I was about 3 years out of college, and I got it at night while I was working during the day. And, I had a case study on Kerr's family. And Kerr's family was interesting because it doesn't matter what your name is. You had to work your way all the way through it. And if you were Peter Coors, you still had to interview for a management position, and you had to earn it and all that. Oh,
so the Coors beer. You're talking about the Coors beer. Yeah. Yes. Okay, cool. Okay. Yeah.
I keep knocking my earpiece out.
No, you're fine. You're good.
I'm Italian and I'm knocking the wires every time.
Right.
But I struggle with that, Eric, because construction, not everybody knows what they want to do when they come out of college. And there's a lot of people that, once they find a happy home, then they grow and develop and nurture. So it's not necessarily that they come out. And at the end of the day, if you started a construction company and you worked your butt off, don't you really want to give it to your kids? So, you're challenged to say, well, he's not ready yet, or, you got to earn it. I get really frustrated with a lot of owners that want to drill their child into the ground and make them earn it. And by the time they do, they go, hey, I'm out of here. I don't want to deal with this anymore. Because all you do is beat me down. And, I don't see the big picture. You really got to help your kids see what can be so that they get a hook and they want to do it. And I went through that this summer with my second son.
Uh-huh.
And, it's a process you got to be aware of.
So what did you focus on there with your second son this summer?
So the second son is a 6'7" football stud.
Yeah.
And he's been outside working all summer, every summer. And it's okay, but it really hasn't grabbed him. Now, Mario's going to probably...
So he's been working outside with in the field? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Right on. Okay.
But, it's not really... He doesn't take into it. Mario's the operations guy that understands all the building side of it. And so, Gino comes to work this summer, and I said, I got to think of something different.
Interesting.
And so I talked to, our vice president of estimating, and I said, hey, I want to try Gino at estimating. So we sent him in, gave him a job, cold turkey. He bid the thing. He is so excited about doing estimating now. In fact, his second job, he was low bidder, and he left and went back to college. Guess who ended up getting the job as the project manager? Mario, my son.
Nice. That's awesome.
He goes, I don't want Gino's job. He doesn't even know what the heck he's doing. But, the process of making sure, and I think this is vital to companies that are going to pass it off to families that have multiple siblings, is find a niche for each one of them.
Yeah, that's great.
Overlapping.
That's great.
If you can find something that they're passionate about, think of a business. There's so many different things that people can do. So find their niche, let them do it, and empower them in that arena, and give some separation by between the siblings.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's interesting. So what do you do? How do you handle when they're doing things that they're, it's not right, they make a mistake or something like that? How do you handle the sort of the paternal dynamic and all that kind of stuff when you're correcting them and stuff like that, particularly as they're adults? You know what I mean?
Sure. Well, I'm an interesting breed. I'm not a 100% diehard construction guy. I grew up in an industry where if you made a mistake, you were yelled at. You learn the lesson the hard way, those kinds of things. But I'm a fusion. I'm a blend of a lot of different personalities and business approaches. So, I attribute it all to a learning experience. And that's all you're really trying to get out of it. You're trying to, make sure that they understand and that they, improve and move on and, are successful the next time around. So I'm just a big proponent of continuous improvement. And this is all part of what goes into that. Everybody makes mistakes. Just because your name is Ghilotti doesn't mean that you're supposed to be God's gift. You're human. So, just don't make it again the second time.
So what do you, let's say, 5-10 years from now, you have four kids, am I right?
Yes.
What would your perspective be if, let's say, only one of them wanted to be in the business, or maybe two, or perhaps none? What would you do at that point? How would you approach that?
Yeah, I think about that a lot. I would approach it the same way I am. I would make sure that there's an opportunity for each and every one of them. At the end of the day, you may not like construction, but do you like business?
Right.
Business isn't everything that everybody does.
Right.
You need to make sales. You need to, manage your costs. You need to make a profit. You need to deal with people. So there's so many different aspects of business, whether it's construction or another endeavor. So I always want to say there's something for everybody. But, Yeah, if they end up as only one kid, that's great. If I end up with no kids, then I got to start working hard to go after their grandkids.
There you go. So going back to our earlier conversation as we're wrapping it up here, from your perspective of experience in terms of partnering, what are 3 action steps a contractor should take to ensure a successful partnering project?
Well, the action steps are you need to understand the expectations of the client.
Okay.
What do they want out of this contract? What is their goals?
Yep.
What in their mind is a success?
Right.
The second one would be, what are their risks? What are the risks and how do I mitigate it? What are they up against? Is it financial? Is it time? Are there other factors? Are there stakeholders that are third-party stakeholders that they've got to worry about? So, aligning with that concern and trying to demonstrate that you can mitigate their risk is important. And then it's being a trusted business advisor.
Interesting.
A lot of contractors excel at what I'll call the gotcha moment.
Yeah.
That's basically, when you ask for a change order because you back them into a corner, there's no other way for them to do the job. If you're a good contractor, get out in front, make sure that you know the road that you're headed down. And if you see problems, identify them before they're problems so that you have enough time and enough resources to mitigate it immensely.
So it's interesting to me because you said something there that I've never heard a construction person say, and that is be a trusted business advisor.
Right.
That is such a wonderful perspective. I've never ever heard a contractor.
Well, I think it again originates from the partnering side. I've had project meetings where agency reps, senior agency reps, will go in and they will listen to the dialogue that's going on in a weekly project meeting, and they're unable to determine if our employees are with the agency or with the contractor.
Interesting.
Because their perspective on how to go about just everything that has to do with the project is a project first approach. It's not a contractor first approach. And I think that's a problem that we get into in this industry is me. How do I take care of my problems and what's best for me? And usually that doesn't solve the equation. It's usually about how do we make the project a success, and then everything else will flow out of that.
It's interesting. So just to summarize here, the 3 things in terms of a successful partnering project is number 1, understand the expectations and the goals of the client. Number 2, understand their risks and how you can mitigate them. And number 3, position yourself as a trusted advisor with the project first as opposed to being me first.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll tell you, Eric, at the end of the day, change is going to happen. If the owner trusts you, he's going to go to you and say, how do I solve this? And you're going to come to a fair and reasonable settlement. But if he doesn't, then it's going to be the change order game. I'm going to start real high, you're going to start real low, and we're going to waste a bunch of time trying to figure out how to come to a resolution. Okay.
And so then, and in light of the other part of our conversation, what are 3 action steps someone could take who is involved in a generational construction business and looking to pass it on to the next generation? What 3 words of advice or action steps could someone take?
Well, I think, in a generational business, it's very important that you're real and you're human. You have to be vulnerable, just like any leader. You got to show your vulnerability and you've got to be willing to accept the fact that, you are only human when you're an owner. And sometimes I think that, next gen look up and say, that's too much risk, that's too much responsibility, it's too much stress. And how do you demonstrate that you're able to deal with that and do it in a quality of life approach?
Okay.
So I think that's really important. Connecting early and often. Don't live your construction life at home.
Right.
It's so common that, by the time the next gen gets ready to take over the business, they're totally put off by the idea of doing business because they've seen what it does to the father or the mother. And I think really just accentuate the positive things, the good things that, come about from being in business, the joy of building, accomplishing things, and having a business that, you can take care of families and, be a resource for their livelihood and their ability to grow and prosper. We really treasure that.
And it's interesting because I think my three main takeaways just from what you're talking about from a family perspective. I remember earlier in our conversation, you've really done a lot of work building healthy relationships between the siblings, understanding that the way they relate to each other when they're young will have a massive impact on how they relate to each other when they're adults in the business.
Correct.
And then the second thing that really struck me was this idea of being flexible in terms of what position they should take. So your one son was not really enjoying being in the field. He came into the office and immediately took to estimating.
Correct.
And then that third thing there, which really struck me just now, what you just said there is, particularly when they're growing up, doing your best to keep work and family, keeping a little separation there. So it's not just all consuming you.
Correct. That's the biggest challenge, I think. First gen people that are running a construction company, that's their life. It's 24/7. So one of the things I was blessed with as a mentor was my dad, who was very even keeled and, didn't get too high, didn't get too low, was able to use humor as a way of breaking down the challenge of, stress and all that stuff and telling jokes. And, so you've got to be able to do that as a first gen or as an owner, or else your kid's going to look at you and go, I don't want to be like you. You're a mess. I want to get into this crazy business.
That's interesting.
So I think that's important.
Terrific. Well, Mike, I like to ask all of my guests, what is your favorite place to eat?
Well, my favorite place to eat is a little Italian restaurant. Imagine that in San Rafael. It's in Corte Madera, California, called Marin Joe's.
Marin Joe's.
Yeah.
And what do you like to eat there?
Oh, well, the cheese, the hamburger and cheese sandwich, that basically a cheeseburger, is to die for. So if you go in there and you talk to Paul Della Santina, he's going to give you a heck of a good meal.
There you go. Awesome. Well, Mike, I really appreciate your insights and your time here. I tell you, I've got some great takeaways in terms of both the partnering aspect of construction and the generational aspect. I do wish you the best. I really, really thank you for taking the time.
It was my pleasure. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for listening to this episode of Construction Genius. Hope you found that 1% of inspiration to help you in the next few days. If you like the show, please give us a 5-star review on iTunes. Share it with other construction leaders who you think would benefit. And always remember that the show is brought to you by Kick-Ass Meetings. I've been working with construction leaders since 2004, teaching them how to run extremely effective problem-solving meetings that gets their people collaborating, taps into their creativity. And to get yourself a free copy of the Kick-Ass Meeting Report, go to www.ericanderton.com/kickassmeetings. Grab yourself that free report, read it, use it in your business. You'll find it extremely useful. And thanks again for listening.